Imagine I gave you two choices. You can invest all of your money in one company. That can be Microsoft, Netflix, Apple, or can invest your money and you can own a tiny piece of 500 of the biggest companies in America. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Nvidia, Coca-Cola, Netflix, and hundreds of more. Which one would you choose? Millions of people choose the second option every single year. But here's the catch. Most people don't even know how it even works or what it even is. So in this video, in under 15 minutes, I'm going to explain to you what S&P 500 is, and after you watch this video you will finally understand how S&P 500 works. See, before we dive in to S&P 500, we need to know what a share is. A share, or in normal terms, people just call it a stock, even though stock's something else. There's a difference between share and stock. Now people just call stock. But here is what a share is. Imagine you buy a stock of Apple. Now, what is the stock? What is the share? Imagine Apple is one giant pizza. Okay. This giant pizza is cut into a billion slices. A billion slices. Okay. Billions of slices. Every slice is called one share. If when you buy a one share, you own an incredibly tiny piece of Apple. Now, now how much you own depends on how much money you spend on the share. The shares prices can go up and down because these shares are part of the pizza. If part of the pizza or the company has some success, the slice goes up. If the company doesn't have some success, the slice is cost or the share cost goes down. That's what a share is. A share is a part of a company which you buy and then you own. Now, the thing is, CEOs and board members, etc., they own shares too. Take Facebook, for example. Mark Zuckerberg owns 51% of all shares. And since he owns the majority of all pizza slices, I mean, there is no one who opposes him. He owns 51% of all pizza slices. That means he makes all of the decisions on Facebook. Then there's a chairboard membership where there are 3 to 4 people and each have like 20-30% of these slices. And then they all together vote on the next decisions of the company, etc. So that's a share. A share is basically a pizza slice. A share is a pizza slice in the world. Now back to S&P 500. Most people think that the S&P 500 is something that you buy. Most people think that the S&P 500 is a stock you buy, but it isn't. Let me explain to you what a S&P 500 is. The S&P 500 is a long list. Imagine a long shopping list. It's a long list. Okay, it keeps going and has the names of 500 companies. A list of around 500 of the most biggest publicly traded US companies. Publicly traded means they have stocks which can be bought and traded publicly. That's what I mean. So the S&P 500 is the biggest, most popular list of the 500 most popular companies which are publicly traded in the world. Apple, Hulu, Amazon, Coca-Cola. I'm talking the big things. Okay. So basically, there's a list. There's a mathematical formula which the S&P 500 creators list used, and he created this point perfect list, which has. This is a formula. This list is. Let me explain to you. Imagine you have a chocolate cake. Okay, you have a chocolate cake. What S&P 500 is? S&P 500 is the list of the ingredients. 7% sugar, 8% eggs, 3% flour, etc, etc, etc. So S&P 500 is a list of all of these big companies. 7% Apple, 3% Nvidia, and 2% Netflix, 10% Amazon, etc., etc. That's the list. Okay, that is what S&P 500 is. S&P 500 is not a stock. S&P 500 is not a bond or a fund. It's a list. Now you must be thinking that how do people buy, how, if S&P 500 is just a list, how do millions of people buy it every year? The thing is that they don't buy S&P 500 every year. No one does, because S&P is just a list. Okay, they buy something that copies the list. Now I'm going to tell you what this actually means. Remember the chocolate cake example I gave you? Now imagine millions of people want the chocolate cake. Millions of people want this point perfect chocolate cake. No other chocolate cake. They want this mathematically refined chocolate cake which tastes awesome because it's mathematically refined and people have been working years to perfect it. So, but as this is only a list, this cake does not exist. How will people get the cake, right? So there are companies, investment companies, Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. These are the three most popular companies of the stocks. Millions of people, let's say, give $100 to these companies. These companies collect all the ingredients or collect all the companies. You give, let's say, John gives Vanguard, the first most popular company. John gives Vanguard $100. He says, "I want S&P 500. I want this kind of cake." Okay, here Vanguard is the baker. Vanguard says, "Oh, thank you. I will take this $100." And they start searching. They look at the list. Oh, this is 7% Apple. We're gonna buy 7% Apple. You see, 7%. We're gonna spend 7% of the $100 on Apple. We're gonna spend $2 of the $100 on Coca-Cola, and then Netflix, and then so on. And then after they've collected this, they give this stock to you. They give the ownership to the stock to you, and they keep the $100. But how do they earn money? You see, they bought the stocks and they gave it to you. They did the buying for you. How do they earn money? So, side thing, they take a annual little, very little fee of 0.03% annually. They take of what you bought, like 0.03% of $100. That's less than a cent. That's less than a dime per year. So that's their fee. So what do we actually buy? So the thing is, investors, they give money to the baker or the company. The company collects all the ingredients of S&P 500 and makes a share, makes a collective fund. And the thing is, you're not buying Apple directly. You're buying a tiny piece of a giant chocolate cake that owns 100 of these companies. So basically, the recipe is S&P 500. The cake is the fund, and you can't buy the recipe. You can only buy the cake. But at this point, you must be thinking, why not just buy Apple? If Apple's such a great company and it's 7%, why not just buy Apple? Okay, imagine you invest everything into Apple and you invest everything into Apple. Then Apple starts to suffer. Okay. Apple has a terrible decade and the stocks go down, they plummet. Your investment suffers and you lost everything. Now imagine owning Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Coca Cola, Walmart, and hundreds more. Now, one bad company doesn't decide your future. If Apple still has a bad decade, the other ones will have good decades and the other 500 will balance it out. So the thing is, they're together to be more stable. Just don't overcomplicate this thing. Just keep this in your mind that instead of betting in a race, instead of betting that one horse will finish the winning line, you bet that every horse will finish the winning line. And that's the thing. Okay. But so the biggest misconception is that people say I bought the S&P 500. That's just a saying. Truth is you can't buy the S&P 500. You can buy a fund that the baker or the companies like Blackgate and Vanguard make that follows this list. Now, these recipes may have little bit different. Instead of 7% apple, they have 7.07%, because this depends on the prices and how much they buy. So little diversifications can of course happen. Our fund can't be perfect. But the thing is, understanding this entire video can is the difference that changes everything. That can help you to go from a normal average stock dealer to one of the top tier stock dealers. Because so let me recap. There's 500 companies with their own percent came together to make the S&P list. Now the investor wants this list, but he can't buy it. So he does, he buys a chocolate cake, which is the result of this list. Companies like Vanguard and BlackRock, they make this chocolate guard and sell you a slice worth $100. You buy the slice or you buy this fund, and you indirectly now own tiny pieces of hundreds of companies. Because at first, S&P 500 sounds like another boring, long finance term. But now you know the truth. It's not a company, it's not a magical investment, it's simply a list. And investment companies build funds that lets millions and millions of ordinary humans like you invest in all those businesses at once. Sometimes the most powerful ideas are also the simplest, like a little list. So if you enjoyed this video about the S&P 500, you'll love my next video on how the stock market actually works. Once you understand that, investing starts to make a lot more sense. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can always know when I post more like this.